Everybody, like I promised, first oil change on the Godzilla, right at 3,000 miles, which I think is more than adequate for um, the break-in oil and everything like that. So this is going to be a walkthrough of the exact stuff you're going to need from Ford, a little bit of talking about the tools that you need, and just kind of some of the prep. I'm not going to necessarily go through how to tighten everything and loosen this. If you're even here watching this, you probably know how to change your oil, but this is just going to give you basically how to make it like a 20-30 minute job at best. All right, so as I've talked before, inside your owner's manual or through the Ford Connect app, you can go to service, go through manuals, and find the exact stuff. Now again, I'm going to tell you what's always worked for me, and I'll tell you why I do it. All right, when it comes to Ford, I'm going to use Ford stuff, motorcraft. When I use GM, it's going to be AC Delco. And for the most part, when it comes to Ram, it's always going to be Mopar. That includes their antifreeze, their oil, and everything like that. I'm not going to say that there's not better oils out there, but what I am going to say is this puts them in a real tight spot if they ever want to come back and say, well, you use Rotella, or you use Pennzoil, or you use whatever. Because at the end of the day, although I think most oils probably come out of the same spout at the same factory and then they slap a different label on it, this gives them no room to come back and say, well, you used a filter that was inadequate and we can't prove that K&N didn't have, their quality standards. This is made by Ford. This is the one you need to change on the Godzilla. $5 off Zon, $4 Walmart, $7 AutoZone, any of those affiliated things. It's not really relevant where you get it. You get the best price you can on it, whatever. This is the exact oil you need, 530. So for my climate, everything like that, 530 is what it calls for. But the biggest thing is 530 oils are not all the same. This number right here has to match what your owner's manual says. If it doesn't, and heaven forbid you had a lifter issue, right? That's what everybody's freaking out about. They could call into question, what oil did you use? And if they check your SKU on your receipt and it goes back to a Pennzoil and this number's wrong, then you could be up the creek. Now, there are usually more numbers on the back here where it talks about their standards and everything like that, but it's going to match what's on the front. There might be additional ones, but it has to at least have that service rating that's on there, okay? All right, so our oil pan bolt is a 15 millimeter. You won't need a depot or anything like that. Shouldn't be over torqued on there. I know a lot of people that do services on vehicles, they like using an impact wrench and everything. Please don't do that. This one is not magnetized necessarily, but there was no goop on the end. There was no metal shavings or anything like that. All right. I use one of these as many times as I can. I also have chain wrenches, slap wrenches, and everything like that. Where the oil filter is on this truck, super easy to get to. So thank you, Ford, for that. This is only for removing. This is not to tighten. Again, we tighten till hand tight and then a quarter turn pass. That's all you need. And if you wake up tomorrow and there's a couple drips and it's dripping from there, you can give it a little bit more of a twist with your hand after it's kind of wiped off the oil or dried or sat for a day, okay? But this is a Fram. If you can get in there, I'll just read it to you. It is a 93-15, okay? This is going to work on a lot of different applications. My Cummins... let's see, some of my other Power Strokes and whatnot, way older ones. So the newer Power Strokes have that cartridge type filter one. So again, Fram, this is like $4 off Amazon, so you're good to go. All right, so I already dropped the oil. We'll get into there. I'm going to show you where the oil pan bolt is and where the oil filter is. So big thing is I had this extra little clear tub. When we check our oil, you should be checking all the time to see if you see anything sparkling in there, and you can get a light on it and everything. It's gonna look like glitter. I guess that's the best way to say it. I poured some smaller amount into this cap, so we can look in there. There's absolutely no debris in this oil. So although most people will say, well, Ford oil filters suck and there's better ones out there, this one's doing its job, right? No glitter, so no flaking, anything like that. We can also look down here at the other filter. You can take that. If you really felt so bold, you can go cut it open, see if you see anything in there that's alarming to you. Like I said, if you're getting past where the powertrain's going to run out and you're more worried that this might be an issue, cut that bad boy open. Take pictures of it before, cut it open, take pictures after, and then you can go into Ford and say, geez Louise. But usually, you can see the flaking on this rubber stuff. If not, you can pour out more oil. You can look down inside of it, but you're going to need a super bright light to do that, okay? So I feel confident right now with the break-in oil. So what's going to happen is once this is finally done draining, then we're going to put that cap back in, and then we're just going to tighten it down. You can get the exact torque specs if you want. Just tighten it. Don't over tighten it. You don't need a breaker bar. Although sometimes after I take some vehicles to the shop in the past, I've needed a breaker bar to get those out. We'll go from there. You're going to need 8 quarts. That's when you change the oil and the filter. I'm not too keen on just changing oil and not the filter. Seems kind of strange. Underneath there's $4 worth of insurance. But I guess some people do that, so you might need a little bit less. 2 modes of theory is some people say take some new oil and fill this up. And some people say just screw it on tight. What I do is I fill it up, I let it sit for a few minutes. It's going to soak up in that filter, and then I just give it about another little half right there. Put a little dab on there and go around the rubber gasket to help it seals. Now underneath the truck, you're going to want to make sure that you also wipe off the ring with a lint-free cloth. And then we'll go look at the dipstick real quick. Dipstick on the Godzilla is right here by the battery, or passenger side, I guess, in case you got the extra battery. It's right there. So let's pull it out, take a look at that. All right, so got the dipstick out. Now this is a good indication. You can always tell there's no oil on it anymore, so we've got all the oil out. That top dot is the maximum fill, and this hash mark area is the optimum operating range. If you get all the way down to this dot, my goodness, you probably should have checked your oil sooner or noticed something weird or something leaking. Nonetheless, typically, not on all motors, on most gas motors per se, in smaller diesel motors, this is 1 quart to get it from this dot to here. And again, I do not recommend mixing different oil types. So what we're going to do is we can guess that it's empty, but this says it takes 8. So what we're going to do is when we get to 7, I'm going to just take my time adding that last quart in and make sure we don't overfill it. Again, just never overfill your oil. That's just as bad as being low without oil. So let's get under the truck and I'm going to show you where everything's at. All right, back and back. So here is the filter. That is the new filter that's on. So I spared you the waste of time on that. Little grid pan here is your oil pan. And then that's where that 15mm bolt is going to go. This is a good time while you're under here. Just take a look around. You see anything leaking? You see anything that's over time, stuff can sweat, absolutely. However, sweat I mean by is just have a little seeping of like dusting of oil. That could be anything. But if it is overly greasy and sweaty, that would be something that you're going to want to get with Ford and tell them, hey, this isn't right, all right? Because this does have 8 quarts in it, make sure your oil pan has that capacity or more. So this oil pan I have got from Walmart, it'll hold 15 quarts, so just about overfills it when I was doing one of my power strokes. So there's your oil pan bolt. Again, don't over tighten. This is aluminum, and I don't know if the bung in there is steel or the bolt's aluminum, but nonetheless, don't over tighten them, okay? And there is your oil filter. All right, guys, when you are ready, you can see that this cap and hole is pretty small from what you're kind of used to, the placement of that. Not necessarily ideal, but this is where the driver's side by your alternator, where you're going to fill your oil. And again, right there, it says the 5W30. Now, what I have found in the past is some DEF fluid nozzles, if you don't use them, you can reuse those on your oil. Because as a gas, you wouldn't think I would have those, but I've bought enough of those tubs and just reused the same one and kept the extras, and I use those on the oil jugs. But I do have a nice filter. If you're going to be doing this, then make sure you have something like that in your garage. But as we wrap this up, guys, again, you can pause the video and see these part numbers, see the oil weights. You can see the 15 mil, and then I also had a part in the video where you can see what fram this is. And again, at the end of the day, I like doing my own oil. I make sure I dispose that oil properly. Most of the auto parts stores will recycle it. You might have other ways to recycle the oil. But again, if you don't have the ability to recycle the oil properly, then you're going to have to get this done at a shop. And if you do get it done at a shop and it's a reputable shop, just remember to check your oil the next day, because sometimes people forget to check the oil or put oil back in, and you lose a motor because of it. And then they're like, no, well, we put oil in it, and you say no, you didn't. So it's easiest just to check it. It's not a ding on them. They'll say, well, I understand completely. And then after, like I said, a couple days, just go back and make sure you climb underneath the truck, look to see if the oil filter is nice and tight. Make sure you don't see any leaking around the bolt and or the actual filter. And then just check your oil often. And again, I check my oil, even on a brand new vehicle, I check it once a week. And that doesn't mean, it's not just because of this motor. It's every motor I've ever had, and I've tried to implore that into my boys. So always check, because you'll notice something right away. If you see some drips in the driveway, over sweatiness on any of the engine components, low oil on a dipstick, or even some metal in the oil on the dipstick, which it's easiest to call it glitter. I know people say there won't be glitter in there. Yes, I know. Again, like in my other videos, I can't argue proper terminology. I'm just a country boy, and I shoot these videos on the fly to help you guys out. I don't edit. I don't want it to be fake. This is what my channel is all about. So about $55 is what it costs for the filter and the oil if you use Motorcraft. So thanks a lot, guys. See you on the next one. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because I got some good content coming up on all of these LED light swaps and what I used.